Japan is one of the most fascinating countries on Earth, yet most travelers barely scratch the surface. A few days in Tokyo, a quick stop in Kyoto, and they leave thinking they've seen Japan. But Japan is a country of layers. Ancient traditions and futuristic cities collide in ways you won't find anywhere else. And in 2026, it's evolving faster than most visitors realize. We're talking neon skylines glowing after dark, bullet trains slicing through the countryside, villages frozen in time, quiet temples hidden in misty mountains, and landscapes that feel like scenes from a film. But this isn't just about what Japan looks like. It's about how different the country feels when you slow down and go deeper. In this video, I'm breaking down the 15 best things you absolutely need to do in Japan. From iconic highlights to meaningful moments that completely change how the country feels. If you're planning a trip to Japan this year, this list is going to change everything. Let's start where Japan feels almost unreal. When the sun goes down, Tokyo doesn't slow down, it transforms. Neon signs flicker on, crosswalks fill up, and entire neighborhoods light up like a living circuit board. This is the Tokyo most people imagine, and it still manages to exceed expectations. From above, the city looks endless, layers of glowing streets stretching in every direction. At street level, it's movement, sound, color, and scale, all happening at once. Shibuya, Shinjuku, Ginza, each area feels completely different, but together they show just how massive and alive the city really is. The best time to experience it is after sunset, especially on a clear evening when the lights feel sharper and the city energy peaks. And here's the thing, you don't need to do anything specific. No ticket, no attraction, no itinerary. Just being there is the experience. Most first-time visitors rush through Tokyo during the day and miss this version entirely. But Tokyo at night isn't just something you see, it's something you feel. And once you've experienced Japan at full speed, the next place shows you how quietly powerful it can be. After Tokyo's intensity, Kyoto feels like stepping into another world. This is where Japan slows down. Wooden streets, traditional rooftops, stone paths, quiet courtyards, and temples that have stood here for centuries. Not as museum pieces, but as part of daily life. Early morning or just before sunset is the best time to explore. That's when the crowds thin out, the light softens, and the city feels closer to what it once was. Kyoto isn't about rushing from temple to temple. It's about walking without a plan, letting narrow streets lead you somewhere unexpected. And here's the mistake most visitors make. They try to see everything in a single day. That turns Kyoto into a checklist, when it's meant to be experienced slowly. Many of the streets and temples are free to explore, and the ones that charge admission usually cost only a few dollars. What you're really paying for here isn't access, it's time. Because Kyoto isn't loud or flashy, it doesn't demand attention, it rewards patience. And once you've seen Japan's past still breathing in the present, you understand why this place stays with people long after they leave. Now, before we jump into the next experience, the one that might actually make you start searching for flights, don't forget to hit subscribe if Japan is even remotely on your 2026 bucket list. And now, we're stepping into Japan's most iconic natural backdrop. There are few sights more iconic than Mount Fuji. Perfectly symmetrical, snow-capped for much of the year. Rising quietly above forests, lakes, and small towns, it's watching everything below. This isn't just a mountain, it's a symbol. And seeing it in person feels very different from seeing it in photos. Some of the most striking views come from the lakes surrounding the mountain, especially in places like Lake Kawaguchi, where calm water can mirror Fuji almost perfectly on clear mornings. That's when the mountain feels unreal, sharp, still, and impossibly balanced. At night, Fuji doesn't change. It stands in silence. Timing matters here more than almost anywhere else in Japan. Clouds roll in quickly, and on the wrong day, Fuji can disappear completely. That's why some popular routes like Hakone can feel hit or miss. Busy, crowded, and often at the mercy of the weather. When conditions are right, the quieter lake views tend to deliver something far more memorable. No climbing, no rush. Just space, silence, and Japan's most famous backdrop standing perfectly still. It's calm, grounded, almost meditative. And after that moment of stillness, the next experience shows you Japan at its most quiet and traditional. This is the side of the country where time feels slower, and intentionally so. Traditional villages sit quietly between mountains and forests, with wooden homes, narrow roads, and landscapes that change dramatically with the seasons. In winter, rooftops disappear under snow. In spring and autumn, the colors feel almost unreal. And in places such as Shirakawa-go, with its steep-roofed farmhouses and mountain setting, you see exactly what rural Japan has looked like for centuries. Preserved, quiet, and deeply rooted in tradition. There's no rush here, no neon, no crowds pressing in from every direction. Just quiet streets, distant hills, and the sense that daily life hasn't changed much in generations. Most visitors never make it past Japan's major cities. And that's why this side of the country feels so special. It's not built to impress, it's built to last. You don't come here to tick boxes or chase landmarks. You come to slow down, to see how Japan looks when it isn't performing. It's peaceful, grounded, and deeply human. And once you've seen Japan at its quietest, the next experience reveals a side of Japan most visitors never expect to see. When people picture Japan, beaches usually aren't the first thing that comes to mind. But stretch the country out on a map, and you realize just how much of Japan is shaped by the sea. Along the coast, the pace changes again. Cliffs drop into deep blue water. Small towns hug the shoreline. Waves crash against rocky edges instead of city walls. This is a quieter, more open side of Japan, one that feels far removed from neon streets and packed train stations. In places like the southern islands and coastal regions, the scenery feels almost surprising. Clear water, curved bays, and long horizons that make the country feel softer, slower, and more spacious. Most visitors never see this part of Japan. They stay inland, city to city, and miss how dramatically the atmosphere shifts once the land meets the sea. There's a calm here that's different from temples or gardens. It feels open and breezy, grounded in a way cities never are. You don't come for attractions, you come for the feeling of space, and the reminder that Japan isn't just dense and vertical. And after watching the coastline fade into the distance, the next stop pulls you straight back into motion. If Tokyo feels vast and futuristic, Osaka feels alive. This is where Japan loosens up. Bright signs spill over narrow streets, crowds gather late into the night, and entire neighborhoods glow with energy. The atmosphere is louder, warmer, and more playful, especially after dark. Osaka's street scenes aren't about landmarks. They're about movement. People laughing, lights reflecting off the pavement, steam rising into the air, and the constant hum of a city that never fully slows down. Dotonbori is the most famous stretch, and it does get crowded. But just a few steps away, the side streets are where the city really breathes, with smaller alleys, glowing signs, and a pace that feels more personal. The best time to experience it is at night, when the lights come alive and the streets feel electric. And unlike some cities, you don't need reservations, tickets, or plans. You just walk. Most first-time visitors pass through Osaka without really seeing it. But that misses the point. This city shines when you let it unfold naturally, block by block, street by street. It's chaotic in the best way, and after this burst of energy, the next stop reminds you just how effortlessly this country moves. Japan doesn't just move fast, it moves smoothly. From the moment a train pulls into the station, everything feels intentional. Platforms line up perfectly. Doors open exactly where they should. And then, almost without a sound, the train glides forward. The bullet trains aren't just about speed, they're about flow. Cities, countryside, coastlines all connected like a single seamless system. Watching one pass through open landscapes feels almost surreal. A clean streak of motion cutting through mountains, rice fields, and dense urban skylines. Modern engineering moving effortlessly through nature. The Shinkansen doesn't just link major cities. It stitches the country together from coast to coast. That scale never turns chaotic. The system runs with a level of reliability and punctuality that feels almost unreal. The mistake many visitors make is thinking this is just transportation. It's not. It changes how travel feels. No stress, no confusion, no sense of rushing just to keep up. You move smoothly from one place to the next without friction. It's efficiency, but softened with thoughtfulness. And once you've seen how effortlessly Japan moves, the next stop shows how deeply stillness is woven into everyday life. One of the most surprising things about Japan is how spiritual spaces appear when you least expect them. Step away from a busy street and suddenly there's a shrine. Quiet, simple, tucked between buildings or shaded by tall trees. These aren't attractions in the usual sense. They're part of daily life, woven into neighborhoods, school routes, and office districts. People stop for a moment, bow, ring a bell, and continue on with their day. Torii gates mark the entrance. Stone lanterns line the paths, and the noise of the city fades just enough for you to feel the shift. Shrines like Meiji Jingu show how easily nature, spirituality, and urban life blend together. You walk beneath towering trees and forget you're in one of the largest cities on Earth. And others, like Itsukushima Shrine, reveal a completely different kind of atmosphere. A bright torii gate rising from the sea, changing with the tide and light, reminding you how deeply these spaces are connected to nature. You don't need to understand every ritual. You just slow down and let the atmosphere settle around you. This isn't about religion, it's about balance. And after this quiet pause, the story turns inward toward the castles that once shaped the land itself. Japan's castles aren't just historical landmarks. They're part of the landscape itself. Rather than sitting in crowded city centers, many rise from hills, forests, and open plains, surrounded by moats, stone paths, and wide skies. From a distance, they feel calm and composed, almost as if they belong to the land rather than dominating it. Castles like Himeji Castle capture this perfectly. Long walkways slowly reveal the structure as you move closer. White walls catching the light and layered rooftops climbing upward. There's strength here, but also balance. Power without noise. Others like Matsumoto Castle offer a different atmosphere. Dark wooden walls, mountain backdrops, and reflections shimmering across the surrounding water give the space a quieter, more dramatic feel. What these castles share is how they unfold slowly. You pass through gates, courtyards, and open grounds, with views changing at every turn. Even with other visitors nearby, the spaces never feel rushed. The biggest mistake is treating castles as quick photo stops. They're meant to be walked, observed, and absorbed. And what makes them even more striking is how completely they transform throughout the year. Because next, we're stepping into a Japan that never looks the same twice. One of the most remarkable things about Japan is how dramatically it changes throughout the year. This is a country where seasons don't just pass, they redefine the landscape. In spring, entire cities soften under waves of cherry blossoms. Parks, riversides, and temple grounds briefly turn pale pink, creating scenes that feel almost unreal. Then autumn arrives and the colors shift again. Deep reds, burnt oranges, and golden leaves transforming mountains, gardens, and old streets. Even winter brings its own atmosphere. Snow settles quietly over villages, rooftops, and forests, revealing a calmer, more introspective side of the country. What makes Japan special isn't just the beauty of these moments, it's how fleeting they are. Each season feels temporary, and that impermanence makes the experience more powerful. You don't experience the same Japan twice. The same place can feel completely different depending on when you arrive. This constant transformation is woven into everyday life, shaping how people move, gather, and slow down throughout the year. And after seeing how Japan reshapes itself with the seasons, you begin to notice how nature itself becomes art. Japan's connection to nature isn't loud, it's deliberate. From carefully designed gardens rooted in Zen tradition, this is where the country's sense of balance really comes through. These spaces are shaped with intention, calm, structured, and quietly beautiful. Even outside peak seasons, that sense of stillness remains. Paths are designed to slow you down. Views reveal themselves gradually, never all at once. And in iconic spaces such as Kenraku, you see how intentionally Japan blends nature, structure, and stillness. Every stone, tree, and pathway placed with purpose. The best time to visit is early in the morning or late in the afternoon, when the light is softer and the atmosphere feels almost meditative. That's when these gardens feel less like attractions and more like living spaces. And while some gardens charge a small entry fee, many are free to wander and easy to stumble upon. The biggest mistake here is treating them like a quick walkthrough. These spaces aren't meant to be photographed and left behind. They're meant to be experienced slowly. This is Japan inviting you to pause. And after that moment of calm, the next experience shows Japan at its most modern and imaginative. Modern Tokyo doesn't just overwhelm you with crowds, it overwhelms you with imagination. Some of the city's most striking experiences aren't on the streets at all, but in places where design, light, and scale reshape how you see Japan. In Team Lab, art stops being something you look at and becomes something you move through. Mirrored rooms stretch into infinity. Digital koi scatter at your feet as columns of light shift and pulse with every step. Nothing is fixed. Every moment changes with you, then disappears. It feels less like a museum and more like stepping inside Tokyo's creative mind. And just a few floors above the city, the perspective flips. Observation decks reveal Tokyo as a living system. From above, Tokyo stretches in every direction. Streets, towers, and crossings reduced to patterns of light and motion. At Shibuya Sky, the ascent itself becomes part of the experience. Glass and open air carrying you through the city as Tokyo slowly unfolds below. Together, these experiences reveal a Tokyo built on ideas, a city designed to be seen from the inside and from the sky. And after experiencing Tokyo at its most modern, you see where old and new Japan stand side by side. There's a side of Japan you only feel when you slow down. And nowhere captures that better than a traditional onsen town. These towns are built around natural hot springs, but what makes them unforgettable isn't just the baths, it's the atmosphere. Wooden ryokan lining quiet streets, lanterns glowing at dusk. The sound of running water between old buildings. Steam drifting through the air as if the entire town is breathing. You walk through the streets in a yukata, stop by small family-run shops, and slip into an outdoor bath surrounded by mountains, forests, or falling snow. In places like Hakone, Kinosaki, Kusatsu, or smaller hidden towns, time moves differently. The pace softens, the noise fades, and you start to understand a part of Japan most travelers never experience. Staying in an onsen town isn't just relaxing, it's a moment where nature, tradition, and daily life blend together in a way that feels deeply human. It's the kind of experience that stays with you long after the trip ends. After feeling Japan at this quieter, more intimate pace, the next chapter explores a cultural language everyone understands. In Japan, food isn't just something you eat, it's something you notice everywhere. From street-level displays to market stalls and quiet counters, food is treated with intention and respect long before it reaches a plate. Presentation matters. Preparation matters. Even the act of choosing ingredients feels deliberate. Markets like Tsukuji Outer Market show this clearly. Not as tourist attractions, but as working spaces where rhythm and routine define the day. Knives are sharpened, ingredients are arranged carefully. Movements feel practiced, almost meditative. You don't need to sit down for a full meal to understand it. Just watching is enough. What stands out most is the balance, speed without chaos, precision without pressure. Food here isn't rushed even when the pace is fast. This culture carries into everyday streets as well. Window displays feel curated. Small shops focus on doing one thing well. And everywhere you look, there's a quiet pride in the process. It's not about trends or viral dishes, and it's about consistency, craft, and respect. And after seeing how deeply food is woven into daily life, the final chapter pulls everything together into one last unforgettable view. Long after the landmarks fade, it's the small moments that stay with you in Japan. A quiet train pulling into the station right on time. Early streets before the day fully begins. Shops preparing to open. Owners waiting for the day's first customers as the city eases into motion. These are the details most visitors don't plan for, but they're the ones that linger. You notice how people move with intention, how crowds stay calm even when spaces are full, how everyday routines feel thoughtful rather than rushed. There's beauty in the ordinary here. Vending machines glowing softly at dusk, umbrellas passing in silence during a light rain. The gentle rhythm of daily life unfolding without spectacle. Nothing is trying to impress you. Nothing needs to. And that's what makes it powerful. Japan doesn't overwhelm you with a single moment. It leaves an impression through consistency, through care, balance, and attention to detail woven into everyday life. It's why people don't just remember what they saw here. They remember how it felt to be here. And when the trip ends, those quiet moments are the ones that follow you home. If this guide helped you see Japan beyond the highlights, consider subscribing. There's so much more happening in global travel, and we're just getting started.